Joining us now, Brian Billick, Super Bowl winning coach, BYU football alumnus, and NFL network analyst on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline via Skype. Follow him on Facebook and Twitter at Coach Billick. Coach, enormous news. What is your caffeinated soda of choice?
Well, you are rocking my world right now. I mean, you talk about being born in the wrong century. I feel like, where was this when I was at BYU 40 years ago? We needed this in the worst possible way. It's, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big soda drinker. So just from the standpoint of soda, not necessarily because of the caffeine, but just the soda in general. And the idea of a bunch of caffeinated 20-year-olds running around the campus is I got to tell you, I'm concerned.
Like only a coach can be.
Well, speaking of concerns, what was your takeaway from BYU's performance against Wisconsin?
Well, it's first overmatched. Wisconsin's a pretty darn good football team. BYU still clearly struggling with some inexperience, a lack of explosiveness. And that's a tough one to get against, particularly the caliber of competition that they've had over the last few weeks. It eases up a little bit, but I mean, Utah State, Boise, Michigan State, or Mississippi State is a top 20 team. So it's not like it changes dramatically. So I think the bye is at a good time right now for them to kind of regroup and figure out what they can do. Among everything, it's how do we get more explosiveness in the game? Because clearly we're not going to be a team that's going to orchestrate 10, 12 play drives consistently during the course of the game.
Drastic times call for drastic measures, whether it be caffeine or an overhaul of the season somehow, Coach. But if you were a BYU coach for a day, what would you say to this team right now?
Well, right now, like I said, it's a good time. You just got to take a deep breath and say, let's step back from this a little bit. We talked the last couple of weeks about you go to the tape and you show the players, look, we're just this far away. Whether it's mental errors, whether it's physical errors, which is a little bit different. I mean, the last thing you want to do is show a player tape of him just getting physically overwhelmed or beat. That's different than if he's stepping with the wrong step, punching with the wrong arm, taking the wrong leverage. So it's those kind of mistakes, the things that you can affect as a coach. And you've got to be careful, though, because you also, what you typically hear, and it's true with any team that struggles, you hear coaches that will say, okay, we got to get back to basics. And that's true to a degree. The problem is, what if you're basically wrong? I mean, you got to get back to basics. You can't dummy down the offense to the point where it becomes too simplistic. I was talking to a defensive coordinator in the NFL that their biggest concern right now is that they brought themselves down defensively to enough base calls under the idea of, okay, we're going to make sure we line up right and we're fundamentally sound, but now you're too predictable, and an NFL offense is going to pick that apart. So there's a fine line between getting back to those basics, those fundamentals. You can do certain things in practice, but becoming so basic that you become so predictable, you bring about a different set of problems.
You mentioned a moment ago that you thought the bye week was coming at a good time for BYU. Take us through, as a coach, how you approach a bye week. When you're looking to improve or change things, how much can you do realistically in 1 week?
Yeah, it's only so much, and it's a little different in the NFL because of the length of the season, and it depends where the bye comes from. You'd prefer for it to be later, get a little healthier. You need that, a chance to get a little, get your legs back underneath you, so to speak, and at that point, you want to get away from the game a little bit. You want to give them the time away from the game. This is pretty early. So, yeah, you want to give them a little time away from the game. You want to come back and have some practices without wearing them out, a little more focused on some of those things you want to work on. We also usually use the time to flip it in terms of the defensive guys would scout the offense, and the offense would scout the defense, so that you get a perspective, a more detailed perspective of, well, what are you seeing? Are there any tendencies? Is there anything people are picking up on that we're not seeing in our preparation? That, again, only goes so far, but you can go through those things as a coach. And I'm sure Coach Taki is very much focused on getting his team mentally in the right frame of mind. Physically, again, they'll refresh fairly quickly. You don't want to wear them out. And then the key is you don't want to, in my opinion, you don't want to spend some, because you have the extra time, spend too much time on the game plan for the next opponent, because a game plan can get stale. So if you use an extra couple days to really get a jump on Utah State, by the time you get to Friday and Saturday, your team's kind of worn out on the game plan. It's become stale. So you want to be careful about that.
Now, it's one thing for an NFL team to face the Browns, the Chargers, and I don't know, the Rams back to back to back. But BYU essentially has gone through a stretch of facing the Patriots, the Ravens, and the Falcons. So how much of this, the struggle that BYU is facing, is it due to 3 top 25 opponents, and how much is just playing on BYU?
Yeah, I don't know. You tell me the percentages. I don't know that you can be that specific with it. Believe me, the players are aware of that. I know in the NFL, you look at the schedule, and what's the mantra in the NFL, really anywhere? It's just about this week. And I get that, but players don't live in a vacuum, and they watch the other games, and they pull back and see the bigger picture and can recognize, that's, you look at New Orleans, and they get let up for 447 yards by Tom Brady. Don't think for a second they're not thinking, yeah, but that was Tom Brady. Okay, he's going to do that to a lot of people.
Right.
Not by way of an excuse, but a recognition. Let's give him his due. That guy's pretty good. You got to be careful with that, though, because if you lull yourself into, okay, but now we're going to be okay, we're not playing Wisconsin, we're playing Utah State, you got to be careful with that, because you never want to underestimate an opponent. And then if it doesn't go well, then where are you? Now you've left, you've given yourself an out, and it's not adequate. It doesn't answer the question. So, yeah, we're going to hear a lot of, hey, we're just all about the next team, and no, we don't devalue anybody, and we haven't earned the right to overlook anybody, that type of thing you hear in the NFL all the time. But clearly, as a coach, even though you're all about this week, you do have the bigger picture sometimes as to how you're moving along during the course of the season.
Brian Billick joining us here on BYU Sports Nation, and that is a perfect segue into my next question. What do you expect from BYU against Utah State, which, again, not a pushover, but a team that BYU should beat?
Yeah, I think the matchups will be better than maybe they've seen in the last little bit. What you're looking for is that increased efficiency as you have the matchups. I mean, I've said it many times. I may have even visited with you guys about Mike Robinson, my partner on Game Day First for all those years when I was doing the Sunday show with Mike, former fullback for the Seattle Seahawks, and always had his favorite saying is, this is a game of Jimmys and Joes, not X's and O's. And ultimately it is. I mean, it does come down to the physical matchups. So you got to see where those matchups favor you, press those advantages, and it just at the right time, that if you can play a good game and show those matchups to show your team, yeah, we are capable of being a good team, and we're going to take it on the field the next week against Boise State, and then against a very good Mississippi State team, and we'll see where those matchups are. So, this game, at the end of the day, always does come down to the players. But you want to give your players that sense of hope. You never want to reduce the wins and losses, or particularly the losses, to just being, we're just not good enough, because now you've removed all hope from your team.
In the NFL, 3 sacks and a forced fumble in a Monday night primetime win for the Detroit Lions from Ziggy Ansahs. Coach, what is the ceiling for Ziggy?
Yeah, I don't know that we've seen it. It's huge. I think we've talked about it before. He's still really relatively a neophyte to the game. I'll go back to Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours for those that are familiar with. I don't know that Ziggy's had his 10,000 hours yet, which is scary as to how good this guy can be, because he plays the proverbial, he plays long, which is basically NFL speak for he can get off the edge, has long arms, and can do those things with leverage. He's building his game. His full repertoire of inside-outside power moves. He's showing an increased understanding of the game, of the people and the relationships around him. And so, he's getting to the point where this guy could be clearly on track for a double-digit sack guy. Vic Beasley got hurt down in Atlanta. And so the number of people that could truly be that kind of guy, Ziggy could get into that category. And, certainly on pace for it. It's hard to, you're not going to anticipate him staying on this pace. That's a lot. But they've played some pretty good opponents. They've got some good ones coming up. Particularly, Detroit needs this. If they're going to beat Atlanta. Atlanta's a pretty good football team. So they're going to need a big game by Ziggy Ansahs.
I know Jason wants you to say the Kansas City Chiefs, but who's the best team in the NFL after 2 weeks?
Well, it's after 2 weeks. It's amazing the conversation we're going to have to answer that question at the quarter mark versus the halfway mark versus the three-quarter versus the end of the year are going to be dramatically different. Right now, based on what they've done, the explosiveness they've shown, it's hard not to say the Kansas City Chiefs. I think the Oakland Raiders. I think the AFC West is good right now. I mean, Denver leads the league in rushing. God, who'd have thought that? So I think the best – you could see 3 teams in the playoffs from the AFC. Obviously, the Atlanta Falcons show that they're for real. We've seen some chinks in the armor. The Dallas Cowboys, a team that was supposed to be on that edge. So, yeah, we have a lot of undefeated teams right now, but Kansas City certainly has a lot of ammunition if you want to have that conversation sitting down over a Coke and deciding who the best team is.
This is the best day ever for Jason Shepard.
Yeah. I mean, as a Chiefs fan, you've just made my day. I mean, that's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Coach, what's next for you this week in the broadcast arena?
Well, I just finished my show on NFL Network yesterday. Every week on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock, Playbook, which I hope people will partake in. Today I'm going to be doing what they call Thursday Night Football First Look. It's on from noon to 2, I think, West Coast time. Basically running through the Thursday night game and some of the other things going on. I do that with Andrew Siciliano. So just talking all things football in the middle of the week on a Wednesday and Thursday.
All right. If some Brian Billick is good, more is better. Mark it down. Coach, always great to talk to you. We appreciate the insight.
All right, guys. Talk to you next week.